Note, before this video continues any further, I just want to say this video is mainly going to be centered around Zombie Spider-Man. I won't be discussing too much of the Marvel Zombies event. I'd rather center it around Zombie Spider-Man since that's my main focus. I will talk about some events that do transpire, but I don't want to spoil it for everyone that hasn't seen it. While yeah, I will be spoiling some of the main story that does involve Zombie Spider-Man, I'd rather have you guys try to read this comic book even before watching this, just to get a hint at what Marvel Zombies was like. This video is heavily inspired by Dorkly, since I did watch his recent video on Zombie Spider-Man being the purest version of Spider-Man, so I will link his video down below. But again, this video will mainly be centered around Zombie Spider-Man, and if you haven't read Marvel Zombies, note that while watching this video, there will be some spoilers onto his story if you'd like to continue. If not, it's okay to click off, read, and then just come back. You can continue ahead now, depending whatever you've chosen.
Hey, relax. I'm just your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man.
Oh yeah? Well then, what the hell happened to the neighborhood?
No! Mary Jane! Mary Jane!
While there are many disturbing and traumatizing comics in both Marvel's history and DC Comics history as well, there's one that traumatized me from an early age that somehow managed to make me a comic book fan and sparked my interest into reading more, and that was Marvel Zombies. This comic book run in general featured some of the most gruesome and terrifying scenes in Marvel Comics history. While it wasn't on the levels of Marvel Ruins, Marvel Zombies was very depressing, as you had to witness your favorite superheroes either becoming human Happy Meals or becoming just another member of the undead. What made this series even more special for me now that I'm older were some of the people involved with the run that made it feel good, and it definitely holds up to this day. One in particular that I can think of is the creator of one of my favorite shows, that being The Walking Dead, Robert Kirkman. Marvel Zombies had a giant run that featured multiple realities to dimensions to even having spin-offs with one of my favorite action horror heroes, Ashley J. Williams. In today's episode of One Heroic Moment, I'm your host, that guy Frankie, and I will be your guide throughout this dark reality. Follow me and witness one of the best redemption arcs in superhero history. This is the redemption of Zombie Spider-Man. The cause of this mysterious infection in this universe was unknown, but it would later turn out to be caused by one of Marvel's most powerful heroes, that being the Sentry, and that this was all part of a paradoxical loop. This infection ravaged through the realms, and nearly every hero succumbed to the virus. Heroes like the Avengers, Earth's mightiest heroes, heroes like the gifted X-Men, the Fantastic Four, and countless others met their demise to this infection. Although infected with the virus, these ghouls weren't your ordinary mindless, brain-dead corpses. Rather, unique and terrifying. Marvel Zombies did something different yet similar to that of George Romero's style from the Living Dead series, giving them the ability to remember who they were and have their mindset just now controlled by hunger instead of being a force of good The hunger took over everyone and caused a mass extinction of the human race in this realm. The living were few as the walking dead now roamed the streets and took over. What does this have to do with Spider-Man though? When am I going to bring up Spider-Man as suggested in the title? Well, here you go, true believers. Spider-Man was one of the few that briefly fought his infection, as this was evident during the Ash and the Army of Darkness versus Marvel Zombies story, where Peter did get infected by Captain America, yet took a good amount of time to turn. Before falling to the virus, however, our friendly neighborhood Spider-Man attempted to save as many New Yorkers during the outbreak incident and did a decent job. Even before his initial infection, Peter put his life on the line against these flesh eaters without caring or thinking twice for his own life, as he cared for humanity and he wanted to save it, even if it meant fighting his now undead friends. We were meant to think that maybe Peter wouldn't turn thanks to his powers, but if superheroes like the Hulk and Deadpool and others like Wolverine, to name a few, can turn, chances for Peter Parker remaining human were very slim. Spider-Man is no more. Spider-Man inevitably turned into one of the undead, and it was very heartbreaking having to see his transformation. And it was even more haunting when I was a kid, even just reading this. Once Peter Parker had transformed, the hero we once knew was gone. The Spider-Man we grew up reading in comics, watching on TV and on the big screen was completely given a 180 into a new, horrendous and bleak direction. Peter Parker made his way back home only to find Mary Jane and Aunt May there waiting for him, worried as they've been watching the news with the events transpiring. They noticed that he wasn't himself, rather different, as Peter never came home this different. Soon, however, the hunger strikes, and Peter does his best to hold himself back, fending off the crave of human flesh, but the scent of human flesh, the thirst for it, is just too much for him to even handle. Peter Parker is long gone. All that remains is the infected. Mary Jane is the first of the two to get attacked by him as he jumps over onto her and starts tearing at her. He yells at May, "Get back," and to lock herself in the bathroom as he can't fight this disease. Aunt May and Mary Jane's fates are later sealed. In a follow-up panel, Peter holds up Aunt May's decapitated head, whereas Mary Jane became a walking corpse with most of her limbs missing. Zombie Peter Parker's story is just one of many that had such a daunting story. The kid from Queens that quipped his way into fights, saved the neighborhood, was now nothing more than a zombie.
This is my gift, my curse.
His story does have a somewhat happy ending that I will get to, but in order to get there, our destination comes to a halt with even more terrifying scenes to witness. Out of nearly every zombie superhero left in this world, Zombie Spider-Man seems to be the only one capable of trying to fight back against their hunger. Somehow, in some way, later on, Peter does end up keeping a sense of his humanity intact, or at least tries to, since he's one of many to soon realize that the hunger is really all in their head, and that they can cure themselves if they try their best to stop craving human flesh. Also, I just did realize that I ignored a lot of the whole Galactus event, so let me bring you guys up to speed right here and right now. Silver Surfer makes his way back to their world, gets destroyed by the Hulk and consumed by everyone there, and this causes a chain reaction, and this leads to the big tall purple boy, no, not Purple Man, not Thanos, not at least yet, to throw a fit and start shooting lasers at them, only to fail so bad that now Earth's mightiest zombies consume him and gain cosmic abilities. They can now travel within dimensions and realities. It's right around the corner during Marvel Zombies 2, where Peter gets some of the other zombies to try and stop craving human flesh after an endless amount of consuming whole worlds. This would cause a divide amongst the flesh eaters, with the likes of Luke Cage joining him as they try to help zombie Black Panther, Wasp, and Hawkeye save the remaining humans. A battle amongst the group ensues, only for the other party to realize that their hunger is gone as well, albeit for one superpowered being. Enter the Hulk. Maximum destruction. The remaining zombie heroes and zombie villains turned heroes turn their attention towards the Hulk, and it nearly causes all of them to die trying, until he reverts back to his form of Bruce Banner. Now is their chance to kill him off, as he even pleads for them to kill him at this point, and that they do. But for the safety of the remaining human race, the Marvel zombies are transported to different dimensions yet again, and to multiple realities. And because of this reaction, all hell breaks loose once again, thanks to the hunger coming back to haunt the zombies. Marvel Zombies Returns is where we witness zombie Peter Parker revert back into the monster he tried to keep locked down away from the people so he wouldn't hurt them. Parker was sent to a different dimension that was similar to his, set back in the golden age of comics. The realm was known or referred to as Earth 91126, and everything looked fun and innocent. Again, this was the golden age run where we were barely getting to know the wall crawler, but Parker's luck just ran out. The scent came back. The smell, the craving of human flesh starts to get at him, and it proves to be too much for him yet again. Parker starts to wreak havoc in this reality and starts to kill and eat characters like Mary Jane once again, his best friend Harry Osborn, and even Gwen Stacy. The Sinister Six show up, but didn't expect any of this to happen, because really, why would they? This is just supposed to be another day of them either kicking Spider-Man's ass or Spider-Man kicking theirs, and nothing terrifying or gruesome like this ever happens. They're shocked still, and they attempt to hold off Spider-Man, but one by one, they all go down, or they're either devoured by the wall-crawling menace. Our fishbowl boy gets his dome punched out, uses Electro to electrocute Doc Ock to death, swings onto Vulture and tears off his wings, only to use them on Electro to behead him, and tears out Kraven's throat. The only member of the Sinister Six left standing is none other than Sandman. He can't be infected nor devoured, so he makes a quick getaway to escape. This world, this reality, suffers yet again to the hunger, thanks to Spider-Man succumbing to it again. All would seem dark and bleak, but this story, like I mentioned in the beginning, does actually have a somewhat happy ending. We now journey onto the redemption of Peter Parker, or technically, as the title does suggest, Zombie Spider-Man. After all the grief that Peter went through, all the realizations of every action and atrocity he committed, Parker does the one thing that truly traumatized me and makes me wish I would never have to see it again, because this is nightmare-inducing fuel. Peter Parker tears off his own skin and dumps it in a trash bin, similar to the iconic Spider-Man No More cover, but here instead it's Peter Parker No More, only the zombie. Peter goes through a process of trying to change again for the better, as he came to the realization that this is terrible. He needs to stop. He needs to be the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man again for the better, and travels within dimensions to find a cure for this plague, and ends up teaming with the likes of Sandman as well as Rhodes to take on Zombie Hulk, Moon Knight, Wolverine, who is now the worst there is and the worst there ever will be, because what he does ain't exactly nice. With the help of Rhodes and Sandman, Peter does the unthinkable. Rhodes has some nanites that Tony Stark made in their dimension that were made to cure cancer and diseases, but here instead, the nanites are used to destroy the Marvel zombies. With the help of Flint Marko, he manages to take the nanites with him without being disintegrated or hurt, and travels through each of the zombies, killing them from the inside and turning them into skeletons. Think of the snap scene from Avengers Infinity War, but a lot more gruesome. Sadly, however, this is the end of our tragic hero, our friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. Even though he committed some of the worst actions possible, devoured the ones he loved, Peter was trying his best to stop and find a way to cure this plague. He was one of the few zombies to rebel against the hunger and try to save humanity. Like Dorkley said in his video, Marvel Zombies did make the purest version of Spider-Man, and in my opinion is one of the most underrated variants of him out there. Although the ending of Marvel Zombies does result in a time paradox, Peter's death wasn't in vain, as he still goes out the hero he was and will always be. Again, just before this video ends, I would like to apologize to those of you that did click onto this video thinking I would do a full-on discussion of Marvel Zombies. This wasn't what I was trying to go for, and I do apologize if I did do a speedrun of Zombie Spider-Man. I was mainly focused on him going through this stage of him being infected, trying to be human, trying to keep his humanity, ends up turning into the worst version of himself possible thanks to the virus, but manages to fight back against it and redeems himself in the end. This is what this video was meant to be. I didn't want it to be anything else, and if you're looking for a video like that, I'd probably suggest watching one of my favorite content creators, that being Comics Explained, because he does a much better job at it than I do. This is a series where I take some of the best moments, or even the worst moments, for a person, whether being a good guy or a bad guy, that leads to them redeeming themselves in the end, whether it be a sacrifice or a heroic action. But again, I do apologize, but I hope that you can still check out the rest of my content even after this video is over. You might end up liking some of my stuff, and if not, that's okay with me. I'm happy that at least some of you guys got to get a kick out of this, because these videos are getting me to push myself more, and I've been trying to put more content out there for you guys that are interested with my videos. But let's segue into the end bit of this project. Marvel Zombies, or at least some of the early comic book runs, were some of the best one-shot stories that Marvel made back in the early 2000s. I loved how it first started with the Ultimate Universe, since it ties in with the Ultimate Fantastic Four and went as far as to creating spin-offs to multiple issues, one spin-off being my favorite with Ash and the Army of Darkness versus the Marvel Zombies. In that issue alone, in that series alone, Ash is actually canon to the MCU, or the Marvel comic book universe, technically, however you want to phrase it, but I loved seeing so many goofy stories like that. It didn't take itself too serious, but when it did, it managed to do a decent job of it because their storytelling was given more time instead of being rushed. Now, before I am gonna take a jab at Marvel Zombies Resurrection, it's still fun. I do somewhat enjoy the story, but I wish that they had more issues with the story. I feel like that was a lot more rushed and could have done better. Even when it took itself really serious, it did have more of a serious approach, while the original Marvel Zombies, like I mentioned, was goofy and had multiple runs and ended up with a weird loop that made no sense of how the virus was caused. I did enjoy that series a lot more than Marvel Zombies Resurrection, so if Marvel does end up coming back to pick up Resurrection, I hope they continue it off better, because in that series alone, I did like that Peter Parker never becomes a zombie and he does get a better happy ending, especially the fact that Blade is important in that series and he never turns into a zombie and he's actually featured in a comic book again for once! But again, going back to the Marvel Zombies run, later issues from the original run would even showcase C-list to even D-list superheroes from the likes of Howard the Duck, Machine Man, the Howling Commandos, and other not so well-known heroes. The art style for its time to this day still holds up and is amazing. To the homage of the covers that they did, we'll never get another great run like the original Marvel Zombies run, and I'm going to cherish it even if I get called an idiot or stupid for liking this because it's just too goofy in the likes of others. Marvel Zombies will always be one of my favorite comic book runs and one of the reasons why I picked up comics even more from an early age. This was episode 4 of One Heroic Moment. This has been your host, your guide in this dark reality, that guy Frankie. Yours truly.
Bye. Have a beautiful time.